The summer of 1940. Over the skies of Britain the clouds rolled and gathered like a vast gray curtain. Winds from the English Channel carried the echoes of engines, the thunder of anti-aircraft guns, and the acrid scent of gunpowder. Far away, tiny black dots appeared, growing larger, spreading across the sky like a flock of dark crows. It was the Luftwaffe, the Air Force of Nazi Germany, coming with the intent to crush an entire nation. On the ground, people lifted their heads and listened to the roar above. They didn't know if they would live to see another day. On the damp airfields of Britain, young pilots tightened their flight helmets, fastened their harnesses, and started their engines. They knew the enemy was coming. They knew the skies would burn. But they also knew this: if they didn't rise to meet the fight, no one else could. This was the Battle of Britain, where the fate of the free world would be decided. Among the clouds. When France fell in June 1940, all of Europe descended into darkness. From the Baltic Sea to the Atlantic, from Norway to the Pyrenees. Nazi Germany dominated nearly the entire continent. Only one nation still stood: Britain. But Britain stood alone. No allies, no backup. Across the Channel, Hitler prepared Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of the British Isles. But before his army could cross the sea, he needed one thing to annihilate the Royal Air Force, the RAF. If the skies belonged to Germany, the Channel would open to invasion. If the skies remained, Britain's Hitler would never set foot on English soil. Thus began the first major battle in history, fought entirely in the air. Each morning, the air raid sirens blared from coastal radar stations. Young pilots leapt from their bunks and sprinted to their waiting Spitfires and Hurricanes. There was no time to lose. The enemy was coming. Sirens wailed through the wind. Engines roared to life. Scramble! Scramble! The order thundered across the airfield. Planes shot down the runway and into the sky, climbing through clouds already torn apart by the sound of German engines. At thousands of feet above the ground, dark specks clashed head-on. British Spitfires dove and turned, chasing German Messerschmitts through the air. Bullets screamed. Smoke burst from engines. Explosions flared among the clouds, then vanished. Every turn, every heartbeat, every hesitation meant life or death. Throughout that summer, Britain lived beneath the sound of bombs and sirens. Each night, the air raid alarms echoed through London, Coventry, Birmingham, and Portsmouth. Families rushed into shelters. Lights were blacked out to hide the cities from bombers. In the darkness, children fell asleep to the hum of engines above, while parents whispered silent prayers. Bombs rained down on homes, churches, schools indiscriminately. Flames consumed entire streets. Smoke rose into the night sky, but when dawn came, people emerged again. They cleared rubble, rebuilt roofs, hung their flags, and smiled through the dust. Because they understood this was not just a soldier's war, but a nation's. Inside RAF Command Headquarters, tension hung thick in the air. Radar, a new and revolutionary technology, became Britain's eyes. It detected enemy formations before they arrived, allowing the RAF to scramble fighters just minutes in advance. Every second counted. Every signal meant blood. Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding was not a glamorous man, but he understood the war was being fought with time and willpower. Under his command were thousands of young pilots, most barely in their 20s. They were students, factory workers, teachers, sons of farmers. But in the cockpit, they became warriors of the sky. People called them, a simple but sacred name, the Few. During those brutal months from July to October 1940, Britain became a floating battlefield. Every day bombs fell. Every day some pilots did not return. One young pilot crash-landed after a fight. His plane burned behind him. He was pulled from the wreckage, collapsed, and whispered weakly, "Did we hold the skies?" A mechanic nodded, wiping soot from his face. "Still ours, because of you." That brief answer captured the spirit of Britain. They didn't need to win every battle. They only needed to endure. Hitler believed that relentless bombing would break the British spirit. He was wrong. Every time bombs fell, the British stood up again. Every time a home burned, they sang among the ruins. Songs echoed in shelters, "We'll meet again." There'll always be an England. They weren't grand hymns, but they carried faith that Britain would never surrender. Children were evacuated to the countryside, but they still wrote letters to their parents. I'll wait until the sky is quiet again." A mother in a collapsed home smiled when she saw her son still clutching his teddy bear. An entire nation was fighting not with weapons, but with heart. In the skies, battles raged on. German pilots had numbers and experience, but they were far from home, weary, forced to fly across the sea every day. British pilots were fewer, but they fought above their homeland. When shot down, they parachuted onto English soil and could return to fight again. German pilots who fell into the Channel were gone forever. Gradually, the tide turned. The Luftwaffe failed to destroy the RAF. They shifted tactics from bombing airfields to bombing cities, launching the Blitz. Hitler hoped to crush Britain's spirit. Instead, he awakened something stronger: defiance. In September 1940, London was bombed for 57 consecutive nights. But amid the rubble, Prime Minister Winston Churchill walked the streets cigar in hand and declared, "We shall never surrender." The people cheered not because victory was near, but because survival itself had become victory. By October 1940, the Luftwaffe was faltering. Their losses mounted, fuel supplies dwindled, and still they could not conquer Britain's skies. On October 31st, Hitler postponed his invasion indefinitely. The Battle of Britain was over. No treaties, no celebrations, no parades, only quiet skies and new graves across England. When Churchill looked back, he spoke words that history would never forget. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. Those few, roughly 3,000 pilots, preserved freedom for the entire world. They didn't just defend a nation, they defended the belief that tyranny could kill men, but never the human spirit. When the autumn skies finally cleared, the green fields of England reappeared beneath the smoke. Children played again. Adults cleared the ruins. A woman hung curtains back in her window, looked up at the blue sky, and smiled softly. A pilot stepped out of his Spitfire, looked toward the sea where the enemy still waited, and thought, "We kept our home." There were no triumphal parades, no victory anthems, only the silence of the sky, a silence bought with blood and courage. The Battle of Britain was not merely a clash of air forces, it was a struggle between fear and resolve, between despair and hope. When the rest of the world bowed before Hitler, Britain, small alone, said, "No." And in the roar of engines and the blaze of the Blitz, they proved that freedom can be threatened, but never extinguished. Today, at airfields across Britain, stone memorials still bear the words, "The few gave us the skies, let us be worthy of them." Those few gave the world a gift, the sky of freedom. And even now, when you look up at the white clouds over England, you can almost hear the faint echo of engines, the rush of wind over wings, and the whispers of those who flew, fought, and fell for something they believed was sacred: freedom.